At the family meeting, my daughter Jessica declared with absolute confidence, "Dad left the 3 rental properties and the beach condo to me. Mom, it's a shame, but you aren't going to receive anything because you didn't take good care of him." My son-in-law, Brian, clapped his hands as if he were sitting in a theater. My granddaughter, Madison, smiled with that expression of superiority she had learned from her mother. Everyone looked at me, expecting to see me shattered, humiliated, begging for crumbs. I just smiled and said in a calm voice, "Honey, you really don't know, do you?" I watched as her face changed. First confusion, then something resembling panic. Brian stopped clapping and shouted, "What is she talking about?" His voice echoed in the living room like a desperate bark. But I didn't answer. Not yet. I let my words float in the air, heavy, loaded with a secret that was about to destroy everything they thought they knew, because Jessica didn't know. None of them knew the truth that had been guarded for years, waiting for this exact moment to blow up in their faces. And believe me, what they were about to discover was going to change everything. But before we get to that moment, I need you to understand how we got here. I need you to see what I lived through, what I endured, and why that smile on my face was the only response they deserved. Let me take you back years ago, when Robert was still alive and I was just the invisible wife in my own home. Jessica was always the golden child. From the moment she was born, Robert treated her as if she were made of glass. Every whim granted, every mistake forgiven, every responsibility avoided as if it were poison. While I worked cleaning other people's houses in the wealthy suburbs to help with expenses, Jessica attended private prep schools we could barely afford. While I cooked, washed, and ironed until the early hours of the morning, she went out with friends and came back, expecting everything to be served to her on a silver platter. Robert never demanded anything from her. He never said no. And I, like a fool, believed we were raising a beloved daughter. But no, we were raising someone who would one day grow up to look at me as if I were her housekeeper, not her mother. When Jessica turned 23, she met Brian, a man of pretty words but empty hands, someone who had never worked a full day in his life. Robert couldn't stand him at first, but Jessica threatened to leave home if we didn't accept him. And of course, Robert caved. He always caved with her. They got married in an expensive ceremony that we paid for by selling one of our cars. Jessica got pregnant with Madison the following year, and, instead of maturing with motherhood, she became even more demanding. She wanted me to take care of the baby while she recovered, but her recovery lasted for entire years. I raised Madison while Jessica went shopping with money she didn't have, and Brian looked for jobs that never lasted more than 3 months. They lived off loans they asked Robert for, loans they never paid back, and when Robert started getting sick, everything got worse. He had serious heart problems. High blood pressure caused him constant dizziness. The doctors warned that he needed absolute rest and care day and night. Jessica came to visit him once a week, always in a hurry, always looking at her phone, always with some excuse. That Madison had dance class, that Brian needed the car, that she had an appointment at the salon. But I was there, every night watching over his sleep, every time he woke up in the early morning with chest pains. At every medical appointment, taking notes on what the doctors said. I was the one preparing his low-sodium meals, the one reminding him to take his medication, the one bathing him when he could no longer do it alone. And Jessica, meanwhile, was already making plans on what to do with her inheritance. I remember the first time I heard Jessica talk about her father's money as if he were already dead. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Robert was sleeping in his room after a blood pressure crisis had left him weak. I was in the kitchen making soup when Jessica walked in with Brian. They didn't greet me. They sat in the living room and started talking in low voices, but not low enough. My mother's ears catch everything, even what they don't want me to hear. "The 3 rental houses are generating about $2,000 a month," Brian was saying, checking something on his phone. "And the condo on the beach is easily worth $300,000. If we sell it fast, we could invest in that business I told you about." Jessica responded with enthusiasm. "My dad always said everything would be for me. Mom doesn't know anything about real estate or finances. It would be a waste to leave anything to her." I felt as if a bucket of ice water had been dumped over me. Brian let out a laugh. "Your mom can stay in one of the small houses, right?" After all, she's used to living with little. Maybe, Jessica said with indifference. Or she can go live with her sister. We'll see. They were talking about me as if I were an old piece of furniture that needed to be discarded, as if 40 years of marriage and sacrifice were worth nothing. But the worst came later. Jessica lowered her voice even more and said something that froze my blood. The sooner Dad goes, the better. The medical expenses are eating up everything. We've already spent over $20,000 on meds and doctors. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own daughter. My own flesh and blood. Speaking of her father's death as if it were an inconvenient transaction, Brian added, "What if you stop buying him some of the meds? I mean, there are so many, he wouldn't even notice." "Don't be an idiot," Jessica replied. "If something suspicious happens, they could investigate. Better to let nature take its course. Anyway, the doctor said he doesn't have much time left." I had to bite my lip not to scream, not to run out and confront them right there. But something inside me changed in that moment. Something hardened, it became cold, calculating. If my daughter was capable of wishing death upon her father for money, then I needed to protect what Robert had built. I needed to protect myself. That night, when Robert woke up, I sat by his bed and took his hand. "I need to talk to you about something important," I said with a firm voice. "About Jessica, about the properties, about our future." Robert looked at me with those tired eyes, but still full of love. "What is it, Eleanor?" And then I told him everything. Every word I had heard, every cruel comment, every plan our daughter had for when he was no longer here. I watched as tears began to roll down his cheeks, as his face transformed from disbelief to deep pain. "It can't be," he whispered. "Not Jessica. She wouldn't do that." "Robert, I wish I were wrong too," I told him, squeezing his hand. "But this has been coming for a long time. Do you remember when we lent them $15,000 for Brian's business that never existed? Do you remember when we sold the car to pay for their wedding? When we gave them the down payment for their house, and they never paid us back a cent?" Robert closed his eyes. He knew I was right. "She always asked me to put everything in her name," he admitted with a broken voice. "She said it was easier to avoid taxes when I was gone, but I never did it. Something always stopped me." "Thank God for that," I replied. We stayed in silence for a long moment. I could hear his irregular breathing, the ticking of the clock on the wall, the distant sound of the television in the living room where Jessica and Brian were still planning their future with our money. Finally, Robert spoke. "I need to call someone. A person I trust to help us fix this legally. Do you know anyone?" "Maria," he said. "Maria Sanchez. She worked with me years ago at the construction firm. She's a lawyer now, specializing in estate planning and real estate. She is discreet and honest. I can trust her." Maria arrived at our house 3 days later. She was a woman in her 50s, elegant but simple, with a gaze that conveyed intelligence and compassion at the same time. Jessica and Brian had gone out that afternoon, so we had total privacy. Robert explained the whole situation to her. He told her about the properties, the 3 rental houses that generated constant income, the beach condo we had bought as an investment, and the house where we lived. "Everything is in my name," Robert said with a weak voice, "but I am afraid of what might happen to Eleanor when I am not here. My daughter has shown that she only cares about the money." Maria took out a notebook and began to take notes. "Do you have a current will?" "Yes, an old one I made about 15 years ago. In that document, I left everything divided between Jessica and Eleanor, 50-50. Jessica knows about that will." Robert nodded. "I mentioned years ago that there was one, but I never gave her specific details." Maria reflected for a moment. "Robert, legally you can change your will as many times as you want while you are of sound mind. And from what I see, you are completely lucid. What do you recommend?" Robert asked. Maria leaned forward. "First, we can transfer all the properties to Eleanor's name legally and irrevocably. We can title them to her, or put them in a trust where she is the sole beneficiary. It is completely legal, and no one can question it later." I felt my heart beating faster. "And Jessica wouldn't be able to claim anything?" "Not if it is done correctly," Maria explained. "Transferring property is an absolute right of the owner. Furthermore, we can make a new will where it is clearly specified that this decision was made consciously and for specific reasons." Robert looked at me. Would you be okay with that, Eleanor? I just want you to be peaceful, I replied. And I don't want Jessica to leave you out on the street after everything you have built. Maria continued. There is something else we can do. Something that will completely protect Eleanor and also serve as a test of what your daughter really values. What is it? Robert and I asked at the same time. We can keep the old will visible. That is, let Jessica believe that document is the valid one. Meanwhile, we do all the real legal paperwork in private. We transfer the deeds, create the true new will, and let everything take its natural course. Robert frowned. I don't understand. Why? Maria smiled sadly, so that when the moment comes, Jessica shows her true face in front of witnesses. If she really loves her mother, she will show it. If she only cares about the money, that will also be evident. Legally, you will be completely protected. I stood there thinking about that idea. It was risky. It was painful. But it was also brilliant. It's like setting a trap for her, I said in a low voice. It's like giving her an opportunity to show who she really is, Maria corrected. And believe me, in my experience as a lawyer, I have seen many cases of inheritances destroying families. But the truth always comes to light. It is better for it to come out in a controlled manner. Robert coughed a little and then said, Let's do it. I want to know if my daughter still has some decency or if the money corrupted her completely. Over the following weeks, Maria took care of everything. We went to the county clerk's office. We signed documents. We made legal transfers. Everything was recorded in government offices with dates, stamps, and witnesses. The 3 rental houses passed to my name. The beach condo, too. Even the house where we lived became my legal property. Robert created a new real will, where he left absolutely everything to me, explaining his reasons in detail. Maria kept that document in her office, along with all the deeds. This is the valid will, she explained to us, showing the official document. It is registered, notarized, and completely legal. The other old will you have at home no longer has any legal value. And if Jessica presents it? I asked. She can present it wherever she wants, Maria replied with confidence. But in any court, this new will and the property transfers take absolute precedence. They are dated later, they are recorded correctly, and they are irrefutable. Robert sighed with relief. Thank you, Maria. You don't know how much peace this gives me. There is just one more thing, Maria added. Eleanor, when the time comes, do not reveal this immediately. Let Jessica speak. Let her show her intentions. And only then, when she can no longer retract her words and actions, present the true documents. Why wait? I asked. Because if Jessica has even an ounce of humanity, she will change her attitude when she sees the old will. Maybe she will feel guilt. Maybe she will try to do things right. Let's give her that chance before judging her completely. But deep down, the 3 of us knew the truth. We knew how this would end. The following months were strange. I knew the truth, but I had to act as if I knew nothing. As if I were still the naive wife Jessica believed I was. Robert got gradually worse. His heart episodes became more frequent. The doctors increased the medication dosages. There were days when he could barely get out of bed. And Jessica kept coming once a week, always with the same routine. She would come in, ask how her father was, stay for 20 minutes looking at her phone, and leave saying she had urgent things to do. But I noticed how her eyes roamed the house, how she calculated, how she was already measuring which furniture she would keep and which she would sell. One day, Robert called her to his room. I was present, sitting in a chair by the window. Jessica, honey, I need to talk to you about something important, he said with a weak voice. She put the phone aside, finally paying attention. Tell me, Dad, when I am gone, I want you to take care of your mother. She has been my partner for 40 years. She took care of me when no one else did. Jessica nodded with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Of course, Dad. Mom will always have a place. I don't mean a place, Robert insisted. I mean respect, dignity. Treat her as she deserves. Of course I will, Jessica responded, but her tone was that of someone saying what the other person wants to hear. Mom is going to be fine. Don't worry. Robert stared at her. There is a will in my desk drawer. It is in a yellow envelope. It specifies how I want things to be handled. I saw how Jessica's eyes shined, like a predator that has just located its prey. "Okay, Dad. When the time comes, I will take care of everything," she said with a soft voice, almost sweet, but I knew that voice. It was the same one she used when she was a child and wanted something, the voice of manipulation wrapped in fake affection. Robert died early on a Tuesday morning, 3 months after our meeting with Maria. I was by his side, holding his hand. His last words were for me. "Forgive me for not seeing who she really was sooner. I love you, Eleanor. I always loved you." I cried on his chest until the sun came up. I cried for the man he was, for the years we shared, for everything we built together. I called Jessica at 7 in the morning. "Your father just passed away," I told her with a broken voice. There was silence on the other end. Then I heard her voice, and I swear I detected a tone of relief. "I'm on my way, Mom." She arrived 2 hours later. She didn't come alone. Brian and Madison accompanied her, the 3 of them dressed in black, as if they already had it planned. Jessica hugged me, but it was a cold, mechanical hug. "I'm so sorry, Mom. Dad is in a better place now." She didn't cry, not a single tear. Brian gave me his condolences with a quick handshake. Madison hugged me briefly, and then took out her phone to take a picture of the room where Robert had died. A picture, as if it were a moment for Instagram. "We need to make the funeral arrangements," Jessica said with a practical tone. "And then we will have to go through Dad's papers. Do you know where he kept his important documents?" "In his desk," I replied, wiping my tears. "He told me everything was there." "Perfect," Jessica said. And I saw how she exchanged a look with Brian, a look loaded with meaning. The funeral was 3 days later. It was simple, just as Robert would have wanted. Some people from his work came, neighbors, some distant relative. Jessica organized everything. She chose the cheapest casket. "It doesn't make sense to spend money on something that goes underground," she told me when I asked why she didn't choose something better. During the wake, I saw her talking to Brian in a corner. He had a folder in his hands. I recognized that folder. It was the one from Robert's desk. "I already checked everything," I heard Brian say in a low voice. "The will is there. Everything is yours, just like he said." Jessica smiled. A smile that shouldn't be on the face of someone at her father's funeral. "And the current house?" she asked. "It also appears on the list of properties. 3 rental houses, the beach condo, and this house, all in your dad's name. All for you." "Good," Jessica said. "After the burial, we'll organize a family meeting for the official reading of the will. We'll invite Mom. Obviously, she has to know how things stand." Brian chuckled. "It's going to be interesting to see her face when she realizes she was left with nothing." "She asked for it," Jessica replied coldly. 40 years of marriage and she didn't even know how to make my dad put her on any document. That is being stupid." I clenched my fists inside the pockets of my black dress. I took a deep breath. I reminded myself that I had to keep calm, that everything was going exactly as Maria had predicted. Jessica was falling into the trap perfectly, and I just had to wait for the right moment to spring it. The meeting was scheduled for the following Friday in the living room of our house. Jessica insisted it be there, in the place where Robert and I had lived all those years. "It's more intimate," she said. "More familiar." But I knew the truth. She wanted it to be there so the blow would be harder, to humiliate me in my own home. That morning I got up early. I dressed in a simple sweater and dark pants. I didn't put on makeup. I wanted to look like the shattered widow Jessica expected to see. I called Maria from my room. "Are you ready?" she asked me with a calm voice. "As ready as I can be," I replied. "You are going to come. I will be waiting for your call. The moment you need me, I will arrive in 15 minutes with all the documents." "Did you bring the copies I gave you?" "They are hidden in my room, in the place we agreed upon." "Perfect. Remember, Eleanor, let Jessica speak first. Let her say everything she has to say. Don't interrupt her. Don't defend yourself. Just listen and observe." "And if she says very cruel things?" I asked, feeling a lump in my throat. Maria paused. "Then you will know you made the right decision. The pain of today will be the peace of tomorrow. Trust me." We hung up just as I heard Jessica's car parking outside. I took a deep breath. I dried my sweaty hands on my pants. and I went down the stairs. Jessica entered as if she were the owner of the house. Brian followed her, carrying that damn folder. Madison came behind, still glued to her phone. "Hi, Mom," Jessica said without hugging me. "Did you make coffee?" "Yes, it's in the kitchen," I replied with a soft voice. "Bring it to the living room, please. We are going to need it." I bit my tongue. I swallowed the humiliation. And I went to the kitchen to serve coffee, as if I were the maid. When I returned with the tray, the three of them were already seated. Jessica in the main armchair, the one that had always been Robert's. Brian to her right, Madison to her left. I sat opposite them, in a single chair, separated, alone. Jessica opened the folder with slow, dramatic movements. She was enjoying every second of this. "Well, Mom," she began with a formal tone. "As you know, Dad left a will. It is here, signed and dated 15 years ago. I'm going to read the important parts." She took out the yellow document. I recognized it. It was the old will Robert had mentioned, the one that no longer had any legal value. But Jessica didn't know that. It says here, Jessica read with a clear voice, that all properties are divided 50% for Jessica Peterson and 50% for Eleanor Peterson. She paused and looked at me. "Did you hear that, Mom? 50-50? I nodded in silence. "But," Jessica continued, raising a finger, "there is something this will does not mention, and that is that Dad, before dying, told me verbally that everything was for me, that he trusted that I would take care of you. Lee. Absolute. Lee. Besides," added Brian, taking out other papers, "we reviewed all the property documents. The deeds are still in Robert's name. That means they pass directly to his main legal heir, which is Jessica as the only child." "I am not the legal heir?" I asked with a trembling voice, acting my part. Jessica let out a dry laugh. "Mom, you are the wife, but Dad and I had a special relationship. He always wanted me to handle everything. You never understood business or real estate. But he took care of me for 40 years, I said, feeling real tears in my eyes. "I took care of him when he was sick." "You took care of him." Jessica leaned forward with a hard expression. "Mom, let's be honest. You did the bare minimum. Dad complained constantly that the food had no flavor, that you didn't bathe him well, that you spent your time watching television while he suffered. Another lie, another vile lie. But I stayed quiet, just as Maria had instructed. Dad told me he was tired." Jessica continued with growing cruelty, that he couldn't take it anymore, that he wanted peace, and you didn't give it to him. Brian nodded, as if backing up every word. Madison didn't even look up from her phone. "So," said Jessica, taking out a new sheet, "I have decided the following. The 3 rental houses are mine. The beach condo is mine. This house where we are is also mine." I felt the air escaping from my lungs. "You can stay here for now," Jessica added with a magnanimous tone, as if she were doing me a favor. "But you are going to have to pay rent. Let's say $500 a month. It's fair." "Rent?" I repeated, incredulous. "In the house where I lived for 40 years? It's my house now, Mom. If you want to stay, you pay. If not, you can go live with your sister or look for a small apartment." Brian laughed. A cruel laugh that echoed in the room like an insult. $500 is cheap, Eleanor. Anywhere else they would charge you double for a house like this." Madison finally looked up from her phone and added with boredom, "Grandma, it's just money. What are you complaining about? My mom is being generous." Generous. That word burned me inside. Jessica continued. "Besides, I am going to manage the rents from the 3 houses. That's about $2,000 a month in total. I need that money to pay the debts Dad left." "What debts?" I asked. Robert didn't have debts. He was always very careful with money. "Mom, you don't know anything," Jessica replied with annoyance. "Dad told the important things to me, not to you. There were loans, credit cards, unpaid medical expenses, more lies. Every word that came out of her mouth was a lie wrapped in another lie. And the beach condo," continued Brian, "we are going to sell it. We already have a buyer interested who is offering $320,000. With that money, we are going to invest in a business I have planned." "Ah, yes, Another one of Brian's famous businesses that never worked. Jessica closed the folder with a sharp snap. So it is decided. This is the fair distribution of Dad's inheritance. I keep the properties because I am the one who can manage them correctly. You stay living here paying a symbolic rent. Everyone happy. I stayed looking at her, studying her face, looking for some trace of the girl I had raised, of the daughter who once told me she loved me. But there was nothing, only greed, only coldness. And if I don't agree? I asked with a weak voice. Jessica leaned forward with hard eyes. Mom, you don't have a choice. The will is here. The properties were in Dad's name. I am his direct heir. You can go to a lawyer if you want. But it is going to cost you money you don't have, and in the end, you are going to lose anyway. Your father loved me, I said, feeling tears rolling down my cheeks. He would never have wanted you to treat me like this. Dad loved me, Jessica replied, raising her voice. You were just his wife. I am his daughter, his blood, his legacy. Everything he built was thinking of me, not you. Brian clapped slowly. Well said, honey. Well said. Madison looked at her phone again and murmured, Are we done? I have a date in an hour. Jessica stood up. Yes, we are done. Mom, you have until the end of the month to decide if you stay paying rent or if you leave. Let me know your decision. She began to walk toward the door. Brian and Madison followed her. But then I stood up, and with a clear voice, without trembling, I said, Jessica, wait. There is something you need to know. She stopped and turned around. What is it, Mom? I don't have time for drama. Before your father died, he made some important changes. I saw how her face changed. A shadow of worry crossed her eyes. What changes? She asked with a sharper voice. Changes that you don't know about, I replied. Changes that invalidate everything you just said. Brian let out a nervous laugh. Eleanor, you are confused. The will is here, it is clear. That will is 15 years old, I said, walking toward my room. But there are more recent documents. Much more recent. What are you talking about? Shouted Jessica, following me. Mom, stop inventing things. I went into my room and took out the envelope Maria had given me. The envelope with certified copies of all the property transfers. The envelope with the new will. The envelope with the truth. I went back to the living room and placed it on the coffee table. What is that? Jessica asked with a trembling voice. Open it, I said, sitting down again. Go ahead, open it and read it. Jessica took the envelope with shaking hands. She opened it. She took out the documents. And I saw how her face decomposed page by page. No, 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 she murmured while reading. This can't be real. This is fake. What does it say? Brian asked, snatching the papers from her. His eyes scanned the lines and his face went pale. Transfer of properties? All to the name of Eleanor Peterson? Dated 4 months ago? Yes, I said calmly. Your father-in-law, before dying, put all the properties in my name. The 3 rental houses, the beach condo, this house. Everything is legally mine. Jessica dropped the papers. Lie. This is a forgery. Dad would never do that. He did, I replied. And there is more. Keep reading. Brian picked up another document. New will, dated 3 months before his death. Here it says that, quote, I leave all my assets to my wife Eleanor Peterson, who cared for me with love and dedication until my last breath. To my daughter Jessica, I leave nothing material, as she has shown that money is more important to her than family love. The silence that followed was absolute. Jessica looked at me as if I were a ghost. Her eyes were wide, her mouth open without being able to articulate a word. Madison finally put down her phone, processing what she had just heard. Brian dropped the documents. This can't be happening. Oh, but it is happening, I said, standing up. And there are witnesses, and everything is legally recorded. Every page, every signature, every official seal. Jessica began to breathe fast. You manipulated him. You convinced him when he was weak. You abused a sick man. Me? I said with a firm voice. Jessica, listen to yourself. Your father was perfectly lucid when he made this decision. In fact, it was he who sought me out to make the changes. Lie, she screamed, Dad loved me. I was always his favorite. Yes, you were his favorite, I admitted. Until he heard what you said. Until he heard you planning his death, as if it were an inconvenient transaction. Until he knew you were only waiting for him to die to keep his money. Jessica turned pale. What? What are you saying? I heard you, Jessica. That afternoon when you came with Brian and talked in the living room, you said that the sooner your father died, the better. That the medical expenses were eating up everything. That you had already spent over $20,000 keeping him alive. Brian stepped back. That was taken out of context. Context, I repeated. What context justifies wishing for your father's death for money? Madison let out a choked cry. Mom, you said that? Jessica turned to her daughter. No, she is lying. She is inventing all this to keep what is ours. It isn't yours, I said firmly. It never was yours, and now it never will be. Jessica lunged at me with rage in her eyes. You miserable old woman. You planned all this. You manipulated my dad on his deathbed. Brian stopped her, grabbing her by the arm before she could touch me. Let me go, screamed Jessica, struggling. This woman stole everything from us, everything that was ours. It wasn't yours, I repeated, maintaining the calm Maria had taught me. It was your father's, and he freely decided to give it to me. Jessica broke free from Brian and began to walk in circles, breathing heavily. I am going to fight this. I am going to hire the best lawyer. I am going to prove that you manipulated him. Go ahead, I said, crossing my arms. But I warn you that the lawyer who handled this whole process is Maria Sanchez. Maybe you remember her. She worked with your father at the construction firm years ago. She is one of the best estate specialists in the state. I saw how Jessica processed the name, her face twisted with rage. Besides, I continued, there is something else you don't know, something your father discovered in his last months. Brian tensed up. What thing? I walked to the bookshelf and took out another folder. This one Maria had given me right before the funeral, but I had waited for the right moment to use it. Maria didn't just take care of the properties, I explained, opening the folder. She also investigated some things that seemed suspicious to her. Jessica turned even paler. What are you talking about? I took out several papers, receipts, bank statements, medical records. Your father noticed that his medications were disappearing faster than normal, I said, holding the documents. At first he thought it was his memory. But then Maria suggested checking the security cameras. What cameras? Whispered Jessica. The ones your father installed 6 months ago, without anyone knowing. Small, discreet. In his room. In the living room. In the kitchen. The silence was so thick it could be cut with a knife. And we found something very interesting, I continued. Recordings of you, Jessica, entering your father's room when he was sleeping, opening his medicine drawer, taking out pills. That is a lie, she shouted. I never did that. The recordings don't lie, I said with a cold voice. There are dates, times, everything documented. And, curiously, every time you visited your father, he had more severe crises the next day. Brian let go of Jessica's arm as if it burned. Jessica, tell me that isn't true. Of course it isn't true, she shrieked. It's a trap. All this is a damn trap. Maria took the recordings to 3 different doctors, I explained. All 3 agreed that the interruption of heart medication could have accelerated your father's deterioration. Madison stood up abruptly. Grandma, are you saying my mom killed Grandpa? I am saying your mother interfered with his medical treatment, I replied, looking at my granddaughter. Whether that constituted a crime or not, well, I will leave that decision to the authorities if necessary. Jessica began to cry. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage and frustration. You planned everything, she sobbed. From the beginning, you and that damn lawyer manipulated my dad to cut me out of the inheritance. No, Jessica, I said with a firm voice. You cut yourself out. With your words, with your actions, with your greed. I walked up to her, until we were face to face. Your father loved you, I continued. He loved you so much he was blind to it. He forgave you everything. He gave you everything. And even so, it wasn't enough for you. You wanted more. You wanted everything, and you were willing to wait for his death, like someone waiting for a package in the mail. That isn't true, she murmured, wiping her tears. Then explain something to me, I said, crossing my arms. If you loved your father so much, why did you only come once a week? Why did you stay for 20 minutes and leave? Why did you never take him to the doctor yourself? Why did you never spend a single night taking care of him when he had a crisis? Jessica didn't answer. She just looked at me with eyes full of hate. Do you know how many nights I stayed awake? I continued. How many times I cleaned him when he couldn't go to the bathroom alone? How many times I carried him when he couldn't get up? How many tears I wiped from his eyes when the pain was unbearable? My voice began to break, but I continued. 40 years, Jessica. 40 years of marriage, of building a life together, of sacrificing myself so you could have the best. And you think I deserve nothing because in your head I was just the maid of this house. Mom, I never, Jessica began to say. Yes, you did, I interrupted her. Just 10 minutes ago you told me I didn't take good care of your father, that he complained about me, that I didn't do enough. All lies to justify robbing me of the little I had left after losing the love of my life. Brian tried to intervene. Eleanor, maybe we are all a little upset. We could talk about this calmly and… There is nothing to talk about, I cut him off. The documents are legal. The decision is made. This house is mine. The properties are mine. And you aren't going to receive a single cent. Jessica straightened up, wiping her tears. Her expression changed from sadness to something darker, more dangerous. You are going to pay for this, she said with a low and threatening voice. I don't know how, but you are going to pay. No one takes what is mine. Are you threatening me? I asked, raising an eyebrow. I am promising, she replied. You are going to end up alone, Mom, completely alone. You aren't going to see your granddaughter again. You aren't going to have family. You are only going to have those empty, cold properties. Madison looked at her mother with a confused expression. Mom, stop. Shut up, Madison, Jessica snapped at her. You don't understand. This old woman stole our future. The money your grandfather worked all his life to leave us. No, Madison said with a trembling voice. Grandpa worked all his life to take care of Grandma. She was with him until the end. You barely visited him. Jessica turned to her daughter with eyes of fury. Whose side are you on? On the side of the truth, Madison replied. Grandma, can I see those recordings you talked about? Madison, don't you dare, warned Brian. But I had already taken out my phone. Maria had sent me some clips of the recordings for this exact moment. I showed the phone to Madison. On the screen, Jessica could be clearly seen entering Robert's room, approaching the drawer, taking out bottles of medicine, putting them in her purse. Madison brought her hands to her mouth. Mom, what did you do? I just took some pills because we didn't have money for our own meds, Jessica stammered. It wasn't to hurt him. What meds? Asked Madison with tears in her eyes. Dad and you always said you were healthy. Jessica didn't answer. There was no answer she could give. Madison turned to me. Grandma, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't know anything about this. I approached Madison and hugged her. I felt how she trembled in my arms. It isn't your fault, sweetheart, I whispered. You are young. You didn't have to know what was happening. Jessica interposed herself between us. Let go of my daughter. You have no right to touch her. I have every right, I replied firmly. I am her grandmother. And unlike you, I do love her unconditionally. Madison, we're leaving, ordered Jessica, grabbing her daughter by the arm. Now. But Madison pulled away. No, Mom. I need to know the truth. The whole truth. The truth is that your grandmother is a manipulator, spat Jessica. She poisoned your grandfather's mind against me. The truth, I said looking directly at Madison, is that your grandfather asked me for help because he was scared. Because he heard your mother say she hoped he would die soon. Because he realized that for her, he was just a bank account. Madison covered her face with her hands. I can't believe this. I can't believe my own mother. It was for you, screamed Jessica suddenly. Everything I did was for you, Madison, to secure your future, so you wouldn't have to work cleaning houses like this woman. For me? Madison looked at her with disbelief. Killing my grandfather was for me? I didn't kill him, shrieked Jessica. He was already dying. I just accelerated the inevitable. The silence that followed was devastating. Brian stepped back several steps, moving away from Jessica as if she were radioactive. "My God, Jessica, what did you do?" "What I had to do," she replied with a cold voice. "For our family. For our future." "No," said Brian, shaking his head. "No, no, no, I don't want to be part of this. I never asked you to do something like that. You were the one who suggested stopping buying some meds." Jessica shouted at him, pointing. "Don't play innocent now." Brian turned pale. I was joking. I never thought you would actually do it." "Coward," spat Jessica. "You are all cowards." Madison was crying openly now. "Grandma, what is going to happen to my mom?" "You are going to report her." I looked at Jessica. I saw the woman my daughter had become. Someone capable of justifying the unjustifiable. Someone corrupted by greed to the bone. "That depends on her," I said finally. "If she accepts that she has no claim on the properties, if she stays away and leaves me in peace, then I will keep the recordings and the medical reports. If she tries to fight this legally or continues harassing me, I will hand everything over to the authorities." Jessica looked at me with pure hate. "You are blackmailing me." "I am giving you an option," I corrected. "More than what you gave me when you told me I had to pay rent in my own house." "This isn't your house," growled Jessica. "My father built this house." "With my help?" I replied. "Every brick, every piece of furniture, every garden was cared for by my hands. I cleaned these windows for 40 years. I cooked thousands of meals in that kitchen. I painted those walls. This house is more mine than anyone's." Jessica picked up her purse from the sofa. "This doesn't end here. I am going to hire a lawyer. I am going to fight for every property. I am going to prove you abused a sick man." "Go ahead," I said calmly. "But I warn you that Maria already prepared a complete file. Testimonies from doctors confirming your father was completely lucid. Statements from neighbors who saw how I took care of him day and night. And, of course, the recordings." "The recordings are illegal," Jessica tried to argue. "They can't be used in court." "Actually, they can," said a voice from the entrance. We all turned around. Maria was there, elegant as always, with her briefcase in hand. "Who invited you?" Jessica snapped at her. "I called her," I replied. "I thought it would be good to have professional witnesses to this conversation." Maria entered the living room and placed her briefcase on the table. "Miss Peterson, the recordings are completely legal. Your father had every right to install security cameras in his own home, and the content of those recordings can be used as evidence if a lawsuit is filed." "You are on her side," accused Jessica, pointing at her. "You manipulated my father together with her." "I did my job," Maria replied with professional calm. "Your father came to me requesting legal help. I offered him options. He made his own decisions. Everything is documented, signed, and sealed according to the law." Brian approached Maria. "And if we file a lawsuit for manipulation of a vulnerable senior?" Maria looked directly at him. "You can try, but you would lose. And not only that, but the process would bring to light the recordings of Jessica taking medications, which could result in much more serious criminal charges." "Criminal charges," repeated Brian with a trembling voice. "Interfering with the medical treatment of a vulnerable person can be considered criminal negligence," explained Maria. "In some cases, depending on the outcome, it could even be classified as involuntary manslaughter." Jessica slumped onto the sofa, finally comprehending the magnitude of her situation. "So, what?" she asked with a broken voice. "Are you going to put me in jail?" "That depends on you," replied Maria, opening her briefcase. "Mrs. Peterson is willing to reach an agreement." I took out a document Maria had prepared. "You sign this. You recognize that you have no claim on the properties. You agree not to contact me, not to harass me, not to slander me. And I keep the recordings and do not file charges." Jessica read the document with trembling hands. "And if I don't sign? Then tomorrow morning we present everything to the district attorney," said Maria with a neutral tone. "The recordings, the medical reports, the testimonies, and we let justice take its course." Madison approached her mother. "Mom, sign. Please, sign and end this." "I can't," whispered Jessica. "If I sign this, I lose everything. You already lost everything, I told her with sadness. You lost it the moment you decided money was worth more than your father, more than your mother, more than your own humanity. Brian picked up his keys. Jessica, sign that paper. I am not going to wait for you while you get out of jail. I have my own problems. Are you going to abandon me? Asked Jessica, looking at him with disbelief. You abandoned us all a long time ago, he replied. It's just that no one had realized it until now. He left the house without looking back. Jessica stared at the door where her husband had gone. Then she looked at Madison, who was crying silently. Finally, she looked at me. Do you enjoy this? She asked with bitterness. Seeing how I lose everything? No, I replied honestly. I don't enjoy seeing my daughter destroyed. But I am not going to allow you to destroy me either. Maria placed a pen on the document. Miss Peterson, I need a decision. Jessica took the pen with a trembling hand. She held it over the paper for a long moment. Finally, she signed. Her name remained captured on the paper with irregular strokes, as if every letter cost her a piece of her soul. Maria took the document, reviewed it, and put it in her briefcase. This is legally binding. Any violation of these terms will result in immediate legal action. Jessica stood up slowly, as if her whole body weighed her down. She looked at me one last time with empty eyes. I hope you're happy, Mom. I hope all those properties give you the company I couldn't give you. Jessica, I said, feeling a knot in my throat. It didn't have to be like this. If you had shown even a little true love, a little respect, none of this would have happened. Respect? She let out a bitter laugh. You took my father from me. You poisoned him against me. Your father loved you until his last breath, I replied. But he also realized who you really were. And that hurts you more than losing the money, doesn't it? Knowing that he saw the truth. Jessica didn't answer. She picked up her purse and walked toward the door. Madison remained standing in the middle of the living room, torn between following her mother or staying with me. Go with her, I told her softly. She is your mother. She is going to need you. But, Grandma, sobbed Madison, I don't want to lose you. You aren't going to lose me, I assured her, hugging her tight. When you are 18 and independent, my door will always be open for you. Always. Madison hugged me with all her strength. I love you, Grandma. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything we did. You didn't do anything wrong, sweetie. You were just loyal to your mother, as it should be. Madison separated from me, wiped her tears, and went out after Jessica. The door closed, and the house fell silent. Maria approached and put her hand on my shoulder. Are you okay, Eleanor? No, I admitted, letting myself fall onto the sofa, but I will be. You did the right thing, said Maria, sitting next to me. I know it doesn't feel like that right now, but you protected your future, your dignity, your right to live in peace after everything you sacrificed. I lost my daughter, I whispered. I won the properties, but I lost my daughter. No, corrected Maria. Your daughter lost herself a long time ago. You just stopped pretending you didn't see the truth. We sat in silence for a long while, listening to the clock, the wind outside, the sound of a house that was now completely mine. What are you going to do now? Maria asked finally. I looked around. The walls I had painted, the furniture I had chosen, the family photos that hung in every corner. I am going to live, I replied with determination. I am going to manage the properties as Robert wanted. I am going to use the income from the rents to help people who really need it. I am going to honor my husband's memory by being the woman he always believed I was. Maria smiled. That sounds perfect. She said goodbye shortly after, leaving me alone in my house. I walked through every room. I touched every piece of furniture. I remembered every moment lived in those spaces. In the room Robert and I shared for 40 years, I sat on the edge of the bed and spoke out loud, as if he could still hear me. We did it, honey. We did what we planned. Jessica showed her true face, just as Maria predicted. And now I am protected. I closed my eyes and imagined his response. I imagined him smiling, proud that I finally stood up for myself. I miss you so much, I whispered. I miss your hands, your voice, the way you looked at me when you thought I didn't see you. Tears rolled freely, but they weren't just tears of sadness. They were also of relief, of justice, of closure. The following months were of adaptation. Jessica didn't contact me again. Brian filed for divorce 2 weeks after that meeting, realizing there would be no money to gain. Madison sent me occasional messages, always brief, always careful not to mention her mother. I managed the properties with Maria's help. The monthly rents gave me more than enough to live comfortably. I donated part of that money to hospitals and nursing homes, places where people like Robert received care. One day, almost a year after all that, Madison appeared at my door. She was 19 now, more mature, with eyes that had seen too much. "Grandma," she said with a trembling voice, "can I come in?" I hugged her in the threshold. "Always, my love, always." We sat in the living room, and she told me everything. How Jessica had fallen into depression, how she lost friendships when the story leaked among acquaintances, how she now lived in a small apartment working at a supermarket. "She says you destroyed her," Madison told me. "But I know the truth. She destroyed herself." "How are you?" I asked. "Better," she admitted. "I got a scholarship for college. I'm studying nursing. I want to take care of people like you took care of Grandpa." I felt pride swell in my chest. "Your grandfather would be so proud of you." "Grandma," Madison said, taking my hand, "I'm sorry I didn't see sooner who my mom really was. I'm sorry I clapped when she humiliated you. I'm sorry." "Shh," I silenced her. "You were young. You believed in your mother as you should. There is nothing to forgive." Madison returned to visit me regularly after that. And slowly, my house stopped feeling so empty. Today, sitting on my porch, drinking coffee while I watch the sunset, I think about everything that happened, about the decisions I took, about the price I paid. Was it worth it? Yes. Not because I won the properties, not because Jessica lost. It was worth it because I learned that loving doesn't mean letting them destroy you, that being a mother doesn't mean accepting abuse, that defending your dignity doesn't make you a bad person. Robert taught me that in his last months. He taught me to value myself, to demand respect, to not settle for crumbs in my own life. And although I lost my daughter, I gained something much more valuable. I gained myself. Sometimes people ask me if I miss Jessica, and the honest answer is that I miss the daughter I thought I had, not the woman she became. But I don't regret anything, because at the end of the day, when I close my eyes, I sleep in peace. I sleep knowing I did the right thing, that I honored Robert, that I protected myself, and that peace is priceless. If you ever find yourself in a situation where family means abuse, where love means manipulation, where loyalty means allowing them to destroy you, remember my story. Remember that you have the right to defend yourself, to protect yourself, to choose your peace over toxicity, even when that toxicity comes wrapped in blood ties. Because true family isn't the one that shares your last name. It's the one that respects your name. And I, Eleanor Peterson, after 64 years of life, finally learned to respect mine. If my story touched your heart, if you ever had to choose between your peace and your family, comment where you are watching from. I would like to know that I am not alone in this, that my story helped even just one person to understand that defending oneself is not selfishness, it is survival.